All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it. Welcome back, guys. This is episode 35, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. We're early March here. Hopefully we'll get this out also in early March. That comes down to me keeping track of things. But yeah. Well, both of us really. But so we want to talk a bit about returns today. I think returns is a messy one in ecom. Wouldn't you agree, David? It's hard to deal with.
Yeah. It's like one of those things that's like one of the hidden belly undersides or whatever. Like I don't know. It sounds, oh yeah, everyone's got returns. It sounds nice. And then you have to realize that, you have to do logistics for that and figure out, and you get stuff back and you have to figure out how to process it and what to do with it and all sorts of stuff. So and I'm in the apparel industry or whatever. So that's definitely a big thing because people are like, this doesn't fit right. And my arm's twice as big as a normal person's arm and twice as small. And so like all sorts of issues arise, but yeah, quite the fun thing.
Yeah, and I think there's so many elements of it. There's the product side of returns and understanding whether it's just a natural part of your industry, what you can do to, from a product side to reduce returns, what you can do from a marketing side, from just providing people information on site to reduce returns. There's all that sort of stuff. There's how do you deal with returns when you get them in terms of like the actual process customers go through to return their item, whether it's on site and then actually sending it back. And then there's the whole reverse logistics part of it, which is also a whole nother thing, which is like, who's inspecting it, who's generating the label, who's inspecting it when it arrives, are you even bothering to inspect it? Like, I think we can go through that funnel and kind of, and sort of strategize a few things, because I think there's several different things that maybe you've thought of that I haven't, and vice versa.
Yeah. It's been quite the journey. I feel like I've changed kind of our practices and protocols a little bit, but overall, like I feel like my brand has a very low return rate. I mean, it definitely has a low return rate. I know it's lower than the industry average, especially for apparel, which is in fashion. Like fashion itself can be 20+% sometimes. And that'd be brutal. I can't imagine like, you get 10 orders and 2 of them are returns or exchanges. Like that's just nuts. But yeah, happy. Do you want me to like kick off and how like overview on how I've been doing it, or do you want to start that?
No, go ahead.
Cool. Basically so there's a bunch of different software for returns out there, of course. Like I have used a few different ones. Right now I'm using Freight, which I really like, and I've used that for like the last year or so, and it's pretty solid. I think it's kind of like one of the underdogs. It's not like actually they got purchased by Route, I believe. They got purchased by one of the big dogs, but it's not really like one of the big dogs that's out there. I really like it. It's pretty solid. I started with it from like their beta days, and all these different softwares, like they basically just facilitate the process of return and exchange. Ideally, they try and upsell the customer or get them to do the exchange, provide incentives. Like you usually have controls to provide incentives. So I think I give like a $5 store credit if someone wants to do an exchange, because that just saves us time and money. And I'd rather have them come away at the end of the day with something that they want, rather than just doing a return. So I've got that like built into the process. I in the past had done like free unlimited returns, that model that I guess Redo kind of has made famous, as someone pays a little bit of money. And there's basically, you're kind of just like hedging your bets and doing like a math play. It's kind of, you're gambling basically. You're trying to hope that the revenue you gain from that outweighs like the costs of the shipping labels. And I think Redo has made a fortune from that gamble. And I had them for a couple months, and basically I stopped using them because I saw return rates were going up and up and up. And so as soon as I switched from them back to a different provider, my return rates normalized. So I think that there's like this just extra visibility when someone sees this little line item in their cart that says free unlimited returns. They're just more apt to do the return rather than like the other process. And my other process isn't friction heavy or anything. I know some people try and build in a lot of frictions into their processes to to make that return as hard as possible, but mine's are like very easy. You can do it within 30 days. I've had them for free, quote unquote, for probably a year or two. A couple months ago, I switched to a $5 just to cover partially cover the return shipping label. And I think that's helps just like minimize that cost on our side. I haven't dug into the analytics on that, but that was something I wanted to do just because it was costing us a lot in return labels. And so it's like I do 30 days, I do $5 to cover some of the return labels. Pretty much if anyone reaches out and they're like a returning customer, they've got like a LTV of a good couple $100 or whatever it is, like we'll typically waive that. And I've got that built into my SOPs for customer service that, it's like, I don't want to cause friction in that process. And I'd rather have a happy customer at the end of the day than say like, oh no, it's day 35 or 45 or something. Logistics wise, they come back to my warehouse, we process them. Typically it's a wrong size type issue. So they will get resold if they meet pass inspection to customers. I've also got like a box of scratch and dent sort of items that don't pass inspection, but those are pretty minimal. And then I also in my processes, I will, if there's like a defective product, something's not meeting expectations, something like that, we'll basically just ship a new one and say like, you can keep that, give it to a friend, whatever, donate it. I don't see the need to like take those back and then deal with them on our own. And I'm basically just trying to minimize the workloads on the back end for us to keep that as simple as possible. I think that's like basically a run through. I have thought about the whole like third, I forgot what it's called, but like a marketplace of resellable goods. I eventually, when my brand is bigger, I wanted to offer that because it is more eco-friendly to go customer to customer. And it's kind of a win-win for customers. I actually have a brand that I really like where I've done that on a third place marketplace. Like I've sold some products of theirs rather than return them and bought some products from other customers. And it's kind of like this fun, like, I don't know, other ecosystem of the brand that's like, oh yeah, they love the brand and I love the brand. And you kind of have this like camaraderie shared around it. And you can write like a little note in it. Like it's just kind of funny. I think that's pretty much a apparel specific type thing for like the brands that people really, really like. But that's not something I do right now, but maybe in the future.
Yeah. So I want to get into that actually, but I starting with just like you talked about use freight, the returns app, which I'm aware of. But first of all, when somebody comes to your site, is there like a default like returns in the footer section? Are they going to a customer account and requesting a return? Or is it always, they reach out to you, customer service then sends them like a link to return their item? Like what's the process generally? I know some people probably reach out to you anyway and like, I want to return this, but do you technically have a way for them to do it immediately, or do you always have them come through you first and then you send them in the right direction?
They can do it immediately. It's crazy the amount of when I review CompSlayer and like what the AI agent in CompSlayer does, it's like 80% of them are like, how do I do this return? Or exchange, even though it's like listed on the emails and everything like that, no one reads those. It is in the footer. Like, I think it's also possible if they go into the orders. Now I want to log into the customer account page to see in Shopify if that's set up in there so they can go through that process. But it is in the footer. It's in emails. Like I try and make it as obvious as possible. It's in the FAQs on like the help center page. So it's definitely out there. It's not like this is a secret link or anything like that someone needs to go through customer service to find. But I'm always blown away. It's like there's just so many emails about that. And it's so nice to have the AI agent deal with those and not have to like have the person sit around and wait for a human to say like, did you read the FAQ page? Here's the link. Not that they'd say that, but
It is funny with their customer service, like how many of them are just like repeatable things like that, which is a good thing on our side because it means you can mitigate it with things like, help desks and AI and things like that. But the reason I ask is because believe it or not, there are some brands out there that have like still very archaic and convoluted return systems. Like I remember I bought a pair of sunglasses from a brand that I quite like here in the UK, and they're big. I mean, they're huge. They might even be, I'm pretty sure they sell a lot in the US as well. And I just wanted to, I didn't want to return them. I just wanted to swap, they sent me the wrong color. So I just wanted to swap it. And so I looked on their website and I realized there's no like exchange return thing. So I reached out to customer service. They send me to a type form. Like
Wow.
literally, so literally, it's not connected to anything. This is like a massive brand, and they send me to a type form survey where I have to tell them what I ordered, literally typing it out, the name of the product, and
Jeez.
then tell them what I want to change it to, and then what my order date was, order number, email, all this stuff. And then they had to tell me to do that. Then they had to receive that. I mean, like the admin time on their side is ridiculous. I really hope they're still not doing that. This is maybe like a year and a half ago. It's not that long ago. Um, so yeah, it's kind of crazy how I don't know where that maybe by sending people a type form, they reduce their returns by like 20%. I don't know. But it's kind of crazy the lengths that some people have to go through to return items. So I was kind of interested in that.
That's wild. Like, yeah, is that an intentional ploy? Like, it's either like very negligent, like someone's just that's not on their radar. Like, oh no, we're not going to build a return portal or whatever it is, or I don't know, they're just too busy or something to think about it. But you got to think like that's got to be intentional, right? Like, there's no way a big brand is using basically a fill in the blank type form for their
Yeah.
returns and exchanges. Oh, that'd be so much work on their end too.
Yeah. And then into that, like return apps. So you're using freight. Like, I mean, I've used return apps, and that's one thing as well. There are a ridiculous amount of return apps in the Shopify ecosystem. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just insane, like the amount of return apps there are. Obviously, returns are a big problem. So like I understand that. But they're also, at least for a long time, I think has changed slightly over time, but they have been very expensive as well. And a lot of return apps are really frustrating as a merchant because they'll have like a $29 a month option, which is like basically the equivalent of Shopify's return portal, like no different. And then
Yeah.
everything else, if you want to exchange it, and then for some reason, exchanging for a different item that's not that's just a variant of the same item, which is probably no different on their side. Like it's probably Shopify doing all the work. So like why you have to pay like twice as much for that? But they'll have like on like a ridiculous tier of like $500 a month. And so many return apps for a long time did that. And I think they just were making the most out of like big companies that could afford to spend 500 to reduce their returns by enough that it made sense, but really frustrating for merchants like us. And I think hopefully it's changed a little bit, but there are a lot of returns out there. And from my side, I've kind of just, we don't have a huge return percentage. So, but I've just kind of defaulted to Shopify's default return experience in customer accounts. And then I also have an app which I actually met the founders of, which is like it integrates with Shopify accounts. So it's got an extension in Shopify accounts, and so it has like a bit of like a exchange feature there. So it's not like a massive Redo app or free app. And I used Redo for a while as well. And like you, I kind of just found a bit suspicious of like the way they were doing everything. And also Redo really got on my nerves because we had international shipments, and when I signed up with them, they said, well, we'll just apply a flat fee to your return amount. So I think ours was slightly high. So it was maybe like a little bit higher than average, but because our bags were more expensive and also they were shipping internationally. So I said, okay, let's try this. And then over time, they just removed the paid for shipping out of international and didn't tell me anything. So suddenly customers were like, you said free returns and I can't return this. And I would go to customer support and they'd be like, oh yeah, we don't do international returns. I said, well, so you're charging the same amount to the customer, but you just took that away without telling me. And that really got on my nerves because I feel like they kind of realized international returns, which is a whole nother thing. International returns is a nightmare.
Yeah, I can't
Even
imagine.
now, like, yeah, I just have a strict policy on international returns now that like they're not free. If you want to send it back your way, send it back your way. And I feel bad about that, but there's just no way of economically doing international returns at a small scale. I think if you're like a massive company, if you have distribution centers all over like the world, then maybe. But for our size, I've not found a way to make international returns work.
Yeah, I can't. I agree. Like, I don't know if I've ever come across that because I don't have a lot of international orders. So I don't even know if that's like listed out on my FAQs or anything like that. But that would be just a giant disaster of dollars just drained, basically. I can't imagine. That's, I think what you mentioned about like the Shopify portal is really interesting because I think a lot of the people that listen to this pod that are the smaller underdogs, so to speak, that's a perfect solution. And I think what's really interesting in 2026 with the democratization of software and how we will see SaaS prices going down because anyone can roll out their own. little micro platforms. Like, I mean, ideally, these platforms, you're right. Like the return software, Happy Go returns or whatever. Like anytime I see new return software, I'm like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. And I look up the cost, which is usually always hidden. So you have to like ask AI or like Google around. Like, oh, plans start at $500 a month with $5 per package or 10 cents per package or whatever it is. Like, it's just like this just huge number. And it's kind of crazy. Like they're definitely not building, they're building for the huge 9, 10 figure brands. They're not building for like the little people. And it's annoying that none of them have the plans for the little people. So I think like, that's a great solution. It's just using the Shopify built in, and that's got a lot better over time. I think they've improved some of the APIs around the exchanges and stuff. It made it like easier to use and stuff. So I think I was going to ask that question, like what you're using and how you're doing it. But like, yeah, I was curious to hear more about that too, actually.
Yeah, and I think Shopify, like the only thing I'd say is that, so you can obviously pull return labels within Shopify. We do Shopify shipping because we ship in-house at the moment. So there's a lot of benefits there. It's quite easy to create return labels. We have like in our kind of like help base, knowledge base sort of thing. We have like just a quick, and we also have like macros in Comslayer. So if somebody, and even AI does as well, it just sends them like log into your account here. And with Shop, it's very easy for people to log into their account nowadays. Like it literally just sends them a code and they're in there. They don't have to remember their password. They can just do it in their account. They can see what they ordered. I quite like that. Yes, it's not like the most streamlined return process in the sense of like, it's not like I don't think it could be better at mitigating returns, but I think there's extensions. There's few different apps now. Return apps have extensions in there. I quite like this all in one place, so customers just go to one place and have to go to like different platforms to try and like find their order. A lot of customers don't know their order number. I don't know if you get this, but a lot of like customers reach out and like, oh, I wanna return this item, or I want to exchange this item. And you say, well, what order number? And they say, I don't know. And then you say, what email address did you use to order? I don't know. And it's really
So true.
cool. Yeah.
There was a customer interaction just this last week where that AI had to hand off to me because the guy was like, well, I obscurified my email when I entered it, like using one of those privacy apps or whatever. So you don't know my email. I don't know what it was, but here's this and here's that. And there's just like, okay, well, if you're going to like mask your email, then like, how are we going to find your order? Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think what I've also seen too is people use the confirmation number that Shopify gives, which is like
Oh,
right
yeah.
after they pay, which is not the order number.
Yeah.
I don't know why, like that's never needed. I think maybe that's on your credit card statement or something. Like maybe that's the only reason someone would need that number. But it seems like that's confusing to most people that don't open their email and see the order number at the top of the email or wait like a couple seconds, because then I think that page loads with the actual order number. But that's super confusing. So I've had people try and enter that number in or email in with that number to customer service and be like, this is my order number. How can I do this exchange? And so then you have to like dig around and play 20 questions with them and stuff. But yeah, I agree that it's like, it's quite the, hoops to jump through sometimes with people.
Yeah, and especially if they're gifts or something, especially if it's a gift, because like, oh, I received this bag, I want to return it, and then they don't know, the person's email, the person that gave them to, they don't know the order, and the person that gave it to them, they don't know the date the person ordered, all this stuff that could help you try and find the order. It gets quite hard, but I do think if they can, it doesn't always work, but if they can log into Shopify, it kind of helps with some of that stuff. I mean, not always, but it can help, especially if it's like Shopify kind of just knows what email they did, they use. And so just like puts a code in, often they can find it there. But I do think that, I mean, going into kind of like what you talked about, the marketplace, or like the marketplace, resale type of thing. That was quite a big thing, like a few years ago. I think maybe like
Yeah, it was.
2021, 2022. There were a lot of like, I think Treat was one of
Yep.
them. It was like pre-loved marketplaces. I think that was more on the side of like brands with like all these like returns they can't sell as full price. So what do we do with them side of things? And for some reason, a lot of those kind of, they didn't really go away, but they just became less relevant. I don't know why. It wasn't maybe such a big thing, but I think they maybe had quite big valuations, some of those companies, and I don't know if they survived it. But I think it's still interesting. I just think there's a lot of roadblocks with doing something like that. I think a lot of brands aren't big enough to do it. I think that's the big thing. I mean, a brand that I've spoken about quite a few times on the podcast, Peak Design, they're quite famous for their marketplace. But they've changed their marketplace, I think. So instead of it being peer to peer, it's now just Peak Design selling their stuff. And so like they use stuff or returns and things. I think because it is really hard to manage. I think I got an email from them one time explaining it, and I think it's basically just like, 98% of people do it properly, but for the 2% that don't, that buy something, and then the other person doesn't send it, and then because Peak Design has to get involved with the two sides to understand why has, that's the whole thing, So
Ugh.
the marketplace side of things is tough. I think I don't have a big enough brand to have like a resale marketplace that makes sense. I don't think, but maybe I'm wrong. And then, but I do think the peer-to-peer thing, like there's some interesting stuff there, and I want to deal more, like dive more into it, especially if like someone wants to return an item and they can literally just send it on to the customer. But then it's always kind of things about like, yeah, but what condition is that item in? Can they really just send it on to the customer? To the next customer, I mean. But there's a lot of people who've tried that sort of stuff. I think freight might even be one of them. I don't know, but
Yeah, they were. I think that like, and that was one of the reasons I think I initially found them or something, was when that reselling, peer to peer selling was like huge, and so I think they had like maybe one of the early ones was their peer to peer reselling. Like they got into that space pretty early, and I think that was one of their big like plays. Um, and like, yeah, it's so interesting that P Design pulled back from that. Like, I feel like that would be a good, you're not dealing with sizes per se for apparel. So like, it seems like it would make more sense. You've got pretty loyal customers, but maybe they're almost like too big for the peer to peer to work. Cause I definitely browsed that marketplace quite a bit, like would buy different things that were used in it. I think I listed one or two things in there for Peak Design, but like, I feel like it's the brands that have like, maybe not Peak Design big, but like one level below that where they've got a ton of loyal customers. And so hopefully that percentage of of failure cases basically is a lot lower, so they don't have to step in and it's worth the time. Um, that's pretty interesting. It was I was kind of sad to see them pull back from that because I like shopping for deals and there was some deals in there, but also people, and I do that. I'm super guilty of this. Like people overvalue used products and be like, oh, well, this Peak Design bag was this like packing cube was $80 new. It should be $70 used, right? Like, no, don't be ridiculous. It should be like
yeah,
50% off or 70 or like 30% off or more. Like at least
yeah,
that much. I'm looking at my Peak Design bag over there, like, oh, that was one that I was going to sell on the marketplace.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It is, and you have to be the one that kind of goes in the middle of that conversation, has to kind of sort it out. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not easy. And one thing I quite like is I haven't tried it, but I don't know who it was, but maybe it's free. I don't know. I've mentioned it a few times now, but I like the idea of like there's a product someone wants to buy, and then below the add to cart there's like almost like Amazon does it. They have like an or used from.
Mhm.
And if you've got a good story behind it and you do it tastefully, I think it can work well because, it might be an existing return. And if the customer knows that that is a used item, then, you can mitigate that return coming back to you and you having to sort it out and go straight to the customer as long as the customer ships it. Or if you just happen to have those used items in stock, it means better inventory keeping on like what items are used and all that sort of stuff. But I like that concept. I just think it's just it in practice is a little bit harder to do, but I think I'd love to be able to do that in the future, and be able to kind of get customers, either customers shipping on to other customers or just like a return comes back to us and we have it there that we can sell it on. It's not just gonna like sit there for a year because we don't know what to do with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot actually, because I have frequent returns and like frequent scratch and dents. Like maybe something's like got some marks on it or something when it wasn't produced, or like missing a button or something like that. And so I've been sitting on those. And typically, big apparel brands, I remember Nike would do big sample sales in person and stuff, get like super cheap stuff. Or yeah, another idea is samples, like just one offs.
Mm.
And so I've thought about doing that at some point in the future, but I don't really have like an in-person location for that. And then with my large catalog, the logistics of trying to plan all that out and build Shopify products and everything like that, like
Mhm.
it probably actually be faster with AI now, of course, but still like that seems like it's not really worth all the effort. But I think like for your products, it's like, oh yeah, someone returned this bag and there's like some scuff marks on it. Like I think that would work really well because it would help clear out what's in there. You don't have like 200 SKUs where you have to try and manage all of this. It's like a couple items. and that UI of like buy used or buy slightly scuffed up or something like that for a lot, like a decent amount less is helpful because then it caters to that person that doesn't want to pay full price. And I think that would help capture people that are more willing to, like, there's a lot of people out there that are discount shoppers or like just are okay buying used. And it also, okay, there's like a whole niche of consumers that are into buying used because it helps just reduce waste in the world. And like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't need to buy everything new. And so there's consumers that are shopping with that mindset. And so that it kind of caters to those people. I like that idea. Like, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I think where it gets difficult is in the inventory management side of things because you have to inspect returns, understand what to price that at as you know, because not all returns are equal. So something that's, you know, new, like basically as new without tags is different from something that's been scuffed or something that's, you know, that just doesn't look quite as new. So you like understand how to do the pricing, but also register that in your inventory. Because one thing is like, this is the inventory I have stock, but how much of this inventory is returned that I can't sell, or I can't sell at full price? And then I think the big fault, in my opinion, comes down to 3PLs not wanting to deal properly with returns. I think that's what it comes down to a lot because there's not an excuse on my side because I actually don't use a 3PL right now. So although I'm looking at them and many of them are like have just terrible returns policies. And so, you know, although I have, you know, somebody who I can have them inspect a return and make a log of that. And then I have this kind of, or I should do anyway. I don't do this well enough, but I have no excuse to have it all well and organized on like what items we have that are, you know, in what condition and stuff like that. 3PLs a lot of the time are just terrible about that. And they don't like to deal with returns. They charge you a lot of money to take returns. Um, they just don't want to inspect things. They want to be liable for inspecting things with it because, you know, and I think part of that comes down to, you know, something that's, if they don't know the product very well, like a bag, for example, they might just quickly look at the bag and then the inside has got like a lining ripped. They didn't look inside. And so they've only looked on the outside, looks fine, send it on. This is probably ready to be sold. And then it goes to somebody, they open it, the lining's been ripped, you know, and so something like that, you know, I think is what they don't want to be liable for that. But it's a, you know, the fact they don't take responsibility for that, or they don't want to deal with that in a good way, is makes it really hard to offer that type of service. Because if you as a brand are completely distinct, like separate from you, where your logistics is happening from an inbound and outbound perspective, you have no idea what's going on in terms of inspection of returns and what items are sellable, and it's probably hurting your bottom line to an extent. So yeah, I wish that was better.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely like labor intensive and just so gnarly on the back end of trying to deal with the logistics of it and everything like that. It's really, it's like a curious situation though. Like I feel like there is viability there for like peer to peer selling like that. You know, that's why people do the peer to peer is like, well, then your 3PL doesn't have to deal with it and the people deal with it. And but as you
Yeah.
mentioned, like there's issues there. That's not the glittery solution that it sounds like a lot of times.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why, and this is going on a bit of a tangent, but it's one of the reasons why I think people who do in-house manufacturing have quite a big strength on their side. Not just because they're making it themselves and they're not buying inventory, having to sit on that inventory, but also because they can do some really interesting things. Like they can, if you're manufacturing yourself, there's a good chance you might be shipping it out yourself as well. So I think you kind of have this kind of ability where you have these people on site that are already paying who can, you can utilize your resources like the best ability. So if a return comes in stock, you can offer, you know, you can offer like services to fix items, you know, and that's really cool. Customers love that. Um, they love being able to send something back and get it fixed, especially in like apparel, soft goods, you know, bags. But also you can inspect returns, you know, have them available so that you know have you just have these options available to you, which I think that brands that don't, you know, that manufacture, contract manufacture, and you know, they just don't have that. And there's some really cool companies like, you know, Patagonia that have these really cool programs for like, you know, fixing items and warranty and returns. But they've had to do a tremendous amount of work with third parties to make that work. For a small brand, that isn't possible. You know, finding people who are willing to do that is really hard.
Yeah, that's it is like, and I imagine even at their scale too, Patagonia, like that is one of the dreams of mine to get that big and to do that sort of thing, or not even get that big, but do that sort of thing when it makes sense. But it's like it still would be a massive investment into people and time and capital to like build out that type of repair system. But it's so cool to be like, I bought this jacket 5 years ago. Can you repair it and fix it up? And I know there's a lot of more boutiques, like a lot tinier brands that do that, especially in the apparel that I like, that I look up to. And it's like, oh man, I just like that. I know that when you're sitting there at the end of the day looking at all the margin and the P&L and everything like that for that, it's like, oh, I'm sure that would be very costly. But and right now it's sort of like pie in the sky, very sounds good, like, but we'll see when it gets down to it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy, and uh, yeah, and I think even like I think this you've got to test these things out. So I think something maybe I've lacked doing recently is testing things out. I think it's worth testing, finding because there's some things that work for your niche as well that I think that you don't expect. So it might be that peer-to-peer works badly for me, it does for you, but it does, but like, or marketplaces generally are difficult to do, but for some reason for your brand, because it has a, specific, uh, you know, niche around it, it works pretty well. So I think it's worth testing. But yeah, one thing also I'd say about the, Shopify return labels as well is like, is it works in the US, doesn't work so for listeners in other countries, you can't auto generate return labels. So if you're in the UK, if you're in Europe, if you're in Australia, Shopify doesn't offer any of those auto generated return labels. So you might have to depend on one of those apps to kind of help you. Otherwise, you're literally manually putting in like the address every time a return comes through, which is not is not fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was painful. I'm curious, like, do you have any return stock that you think of that is not in a mint condition to resell?
Oh yeah,
Mint
we have
condition.
tons. Yeah, I mean not tons.
Oh,
Tons is an exaggeration, but we have a few boxes of stuff. And I have stuff here in the UK as well. I really like the idea of doing like a in-person thing and just
yeah.
like I like that a lot. But again, that takes a size of a brand to. I mean, I know there's a backpack brand here in London they obviously had a massive Black Friday December time, and they did a pop-up outlet type thing. So they basically just did a pop-up in London. So as opposed to like doing discounts on their site, they just put like posters around London. They ran some like they pushed it in London. They told their email list to come to this event this weekend, and they just had all their excess stock in January available people to come. And it was like an event on a Saturday and Sunday. So they basically paid for, which is not cheap. I know like pop-up space in London is like not cheap, but it's quite a cool way to do it. But you have to have a certain size audience to do that. I mean, you don't want to go through that whole hassle and then like 7 people turn up. It's, it is likely what's going to happen if I do it. Yeah. So I think it's tough. It's really tough at our size. I think there's so many things that you and I would want to do, but just don't make sense at our size. And I think that's why we pushing a lot for the growth as well, because I think there's some fun things you can do. I think there's a lot of things that get more complicated as well. I'm sure like for example like returns get a much more of a headache when you're 10 times the orders, and the space they take up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not so much of a hassle for us, but yeah, I think there's some fun things to do at bigger sizes.
It's been interesting the last year or two. Like, as my brand has grown, I've been like seeing how many returns and exchanges come in. I was fretting over that and worried about that. And I looked at the percentage and I'm still like sub 5% returns. It's just like order volumes have gone up so much that now I see so many more returns and exchanges, but it still is a percentage of orders. It's very, very low. So it's just like, it's curious how these things are just like, they change based on your level. And it feels like things could be different, but it's like, no, it's just like, it's all based on volume and numbers. It's a numbers game.
Yeah, and one thing actually I'll just add to that is that when I was doing more financial analysis at the moment and trying to figure out like most profitable products, which ones can work the best, and especially when it comes to like paid advertising and understanding like when you're pushing a certain product on Meta, what product actually has margins where you can afford to run ads and grow. And one thing was starting to look into is actually the return rates of products. It actually makes a difference. So if one product has a 3% return rate, another one has a 10% return rate, that is a meaningful difference to your overall margin when you're advertising, because it just eats into your margin massively. And there's been some times where I've analyzed it where product A right now has more volume, but product B seems to have more opportunity in the future because the return rate is lower and And even looking into all this stuff is quite useful, I think. But return rates sometimes get underlooked. I think I've certainly not looked at them from a profitability standpoint. And you've got to look at the return rate not just from the cost of the product coming back, but also the cost of return label and all that sort of stuff, which eats into things a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I'm now gonna go look at my return rates based on a product to product level. Nice.
Yeah, we should
Cool.
talk to
Anything?
Clio because you can do it there.
That's what I was gonna turn to. Yep. Nice. Cool. I think that's kind of a wrap for returns. Curious what people are using out there. If you're using certain apps you like for returns, let us know. And let us know if we missed anything. Anything from you, Jack, to finish this off?
No, I just feel like I need to start looking at returns and how to optimize all that again. I feel like every time we do an episode, I feel like I've suddenly got to look into a ton of stuff. But there we are.
There's so many things. So many things. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
See you.